internet came up. Did you get yours to go? Thank you. Okay, the Bannock County Commissioners meeting is now in session. We do have one amendment to the work session, which is a discussion regarding the Convergence building. So I'd entertain a motion to accept the amended agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accepted the amended agenda.
We have a motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, with that, we need to go into the Board of Ambulance. We have some invoices to pay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into the Board of Ambulance.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we have claims. Doesn't look like a whole lot. Reimbursements.
Is this it?
That's it.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the reimbursements as submitted.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. And I'll make a motion that we exit the Board of Ambulance. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Accounts Payable Commission report. Do you have any questions on that, Commissioner?
No. And I still don't have the internet on here.
Okay. I'll let you look at that real quick.
You don't have any questions on this one?
I have none.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the Commissioner's report.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have the payroll report.
Any questions?
I have none.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the payroll report.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And it looks like we have search and rescue mileage reimbursements. You have any issues with any of that?
Standard.
Yeah, didn't look too out of control.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the mileage reimbursements as submitted.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Looks like Adam bought some stuff.
Are we all signing this thing?
Yeah.
You
just
have
down
to sign off on, department heads can't sign off on their own invoices,
Okay.
so you guys get to sign off on his.
Yep.
So do you need a motion on this?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve this purchasing card receipt loan.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next we have alcohol licenses. We have 2 businesses applying for licenses.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the alcohol license.
We have a motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have a credit application for Bear Lake Trailers. Oh, this is replacing Bear Lake
Yeah.
Trailers.
They were bought out, so this is the vendor that bought them out, basically, so we just have to do a new credit application.
Okay.
I did line through the personal guarantee because we never do that.
Yep.
Um,
So this is normally just the chair of the commission that signs these,
Yeah.
is that correct?
But I just put commissioner on there because I had heard that Ernie was gonna be gone.
Right, so I just wanted to make sure it was just a 1 signature,
Yes.
so I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we sign this application.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I have that one back, actually? Thank you.
Okay. And I believe that's it until we're within our 15-minute window.
Well, I don't know why you got it and I didn't. What is going on here?
Okay. Who are you guys with?
I'm Jared Riggs, I'm with the Public Defense Commission.
Okay, Jared, come on up.
Where do you want me to?
Right up front and center. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you.
Go ahead and introduce yourself. And
So, my name is Jared Riggs. I'm the East Idaho Regional Coordinator for the Idaho Public Defense Commission. I've been with the Public Defense Commission since 2017. Our responsibilities are in the process of changing over the next year, but currently we are the agency that is responsible for making sure that there is constitutional public defense representation throughout the state of Idaho. So we work with the courts, defending attorneys in the counties to try to help ensure that that is done. And then we are also a pass-through agency that passes some of the funding through from the state to the counties. Prior to last year, we did all of the state funding to the counties for public defense. Last year, there was the new tax commission payments began, and so now we just do a portion of it, so it's bifurcated at this point in time. So we still do the financial assistance component of it, but the tax commission took over the brunt of the payments.
Okay. So what's your take on the system and how it's moving to the state lead? What's your update on that?
So my update on as far as moving to the state system is unfortunately fairly minimal right now. So the state is in the process of interviewing and moving towards hiring the new state public defender. The positions have been posted. I understand there have been applicants. Right now the goal is to have someone hired by the end of September, 1st of October. The way that it's kind of set up to work, and the reason unfortunately that I don't have a lot of answers at this point in time as to what that's going to look like is because the state public defender, and then under the state public defender, the regional public defenders will have quite a bit of leeway under the statute in how things will be structured. So we do know that once the state public defender is hired, they will not become an employee of the Public Defense Commission, obviously, but they'll end up being kind of under the umbrella of the Public Defense Commission for approximately a year until October 1st of next year. They'll be under that umbrella. They will bring in a transition team, and we'll start working towards transitioning over. The counties retain management of public defense until September 30th of 2024, and then beginning on October 1st of 2024, the state public defender will take over the management and administration of public defense throughout the state.
So from a timetable, theoretically you'll have the state public defender in place end of October, and then the regional guys maybe by the end of the year, or do you think it'll be that fast?
And I honestly don't know with the regional guys. The state public defender, once they're hired and they get things moving, they'll be able to give us a little bit of guidance there. I honestly don't know. Anything that I would say would just be guessing, and so I just don't know, Commissioner.
Okay. This whole process causes everybody a little bit of concern because it feels like we've got the car rolling down the road, but we don't know where we're going, so to speak.
And I can understand that. And so I guess I can speak for myself on that. I can't speak for the commission. I think that as the state's been working to make improvements to public defense over the last almost 10 years now, it's been an incremental process. It hasn't ever been something where we envisioned that one new system would come in and everything would just be there and be the end result. It's always been envisioned as something that would be incremental and that we would move and make corrections as we move along. And so I see this as being, I guess, a next big step in that direction. I don't think that me personally, could I say that I expect it to be perfect right out of the gates? I expect that they'll have to adjust. They'll have to make tweaks to the system, and they'll have to do that. But I think it's a good step in that direction, and it puts a system in place where ultimately indigent defendants at least will be, the attorneys that do that will be better resourced, and I think that will ultimately lead to the defendants being represented better throughout the state as well.
So let me follow up on that. How will you ensure, or what's the plan, or what's the thought of ensuring better service for those indigent defenders?
So when I guess, and when I say better service, if I said better service, I meant to say better resources. And by better resources, what I mean by that is, right now, it is a little bit hit and miss. And I'll try to explain what I mean by that as well. Attorneys throughout the state, I think, consistently do the best that they can with what they have to work with. You have attorneys that work in some areas, though, where there's just not access to resources. They lack access to treatment. They lack access to investigators. They lack access to what they need to be able to provide the best defense that they can. Some counties are a little bit more fortunate when they are in more dense population centers of the state, whether it's Bannock or Bonneville or Twin Falls, or obviously over in Ada. There are counties that have access to those resources. Other counties don't have as much access to those things. And I think that when I say that attorneys throughout the state will have better access to resources, I think a state system being in place to work to provide investigators and things will help some of those rural counties in a better, make it more accessible for them to have access to those things. As far as providing better service, the way that the system, the way I understand the system to be structured right now, is that the attorneys that are currently providing indigent defense services that are public defenders, they'll continue to be public defenders moving forward. So they'll become state employees. So they'll either be state employees or they'll be contracted with the state instead of contracted with the counties. And so I think ultimately it'll end up making things easier for the courts. It'll make things obviously easier for the counties, hopefully, because they won't be needing to deal with the management and administration of public defense in addition to all of their other responsibilities. And it will allow that state public defender, that statewide agency that will specialize in that to take over and do that.
Do you see the overall budget for public defense in the state increasing or staying about where it's at? Do you have a feel for that?
I honestly don't know. And so once again, I would just have to guess. I suspect that it will increase over time, but that's just me speaking. I can't speak for that officially. The Public Defense Commission will be long gone by the time we get there. So, you know, speaking of the timeline that I mentioned, what little we know at this time, the Public Defense Commission will cease to exist on June 30th of next year. And so for those last 3 months where the county still has the management and administration, that new state public defender will in essence assume the PDC role until everything is transferred over 3 months later at the end of fiscal year 24, when the counties no longer have to receive the money from the state for it. I suspect, and once again this is me just guessing, but I suspect that just because of the nature of what we're talking about, the courts will continue to be housed here. Obviously the courthouses are county buildings, the jails are county buildings, and there are issues that come up with those things that are necessary for public defenders to do their jobs. They need to have access to meet with their clients in the courthouses, in the jails. And so I suspect that the counties will still have some contact from the state public defender when it becomes necessary at time to work out issues that may arise to things like the nature of meeting space but I think that ultimately it will prove to be a load taken away from the counties.
And we're grateful for that. We are. Last question I have is, will there be any modification or change to the systems that the public defenders are using now? Will you, like the DMV has a statewide, state-built system, are you going to transition anything like that? Or are you going to stay with what you currently have?
So once again, so this is going to be broad terms. They are working on a statewide case management system. They're trying to work with national providers who have developed those types of systems in the past to come in and create a statewide. We don't have one currently. There is not something for it to take the place of. It would be a new system to be statewide. And the hope is there as well. Right now, a lot of the reporting that needs to be done, it requires individual attorneys to submit their reports every year, because without those attorneys reporting, we have no access to the data. We don't have any of that information. But once a statewide system is in place, it will make things easier for the attorneys that are providing those services as well, because rather than the need to provide reports on an annual basis, the state will have real-time access to information regarding caseloads and what the attorneys are dealing with in their cases.
And so the state is not looking to build their own, they're looking to purchase an existing system.
That's my understanding, sir.
Okay. That's a good thing, because some of the state systems that we've had to deal with have not been fantastic.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is they're looking, and so there are statewide public defenders throughout the country. Some states have done it very well. Some states have had rocky roads as they've gone through it as well. But there are companies out there that have built statewide case management systems for statewide agencies before.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything, John?
Nope.
Jason? Nope.
I have a quick question.
Oh, Christie.
Do we know yet what's going to happen with leave liability for attorneys that we currently have? Are we going to be required to cover that payout?
The,
Do you know?
I honestly don't know.
Okay,
I-
is that something that's being addressed?
And I'd have to ask that too. I honestly don't. That's
Okay.
probably a governor's office question at this point in time, but let
If
me.
that can be on the radar, only because we didn't budget for payouts for the attorneys or staff, but that's definitely a significant financial aspect that's going to have to be addressed. So,
I will pass that question along.
thank you.
And it's entirely possible that people higher up the totem pole than I am have the answer already. I just honestly, I don't know. That's the first time it's been addressed from one of the counties I work with.
I had heard that they were already considering that from the state.
I just want to make sure it stays on the radar
Mhm.
for
I agree.
our
Yeah, of course.
protection.
I can understand that. And if I get an answer, I'll give it to you. You may hear from other sources before I get the answer, but as soon as I know.
I think Dave's been keeping up on that as well.
Dave, come on up.
I just haven't heard a final answer, so
Well,
I'm,
the chiefs have discussed it, and HR's considering how they're gonna do that. HR for the state, Dave Martinez, public defender, HR for the state is considering transferring time.
okay.
Okay.
So I guess if I may, a couple other things. Does the county have any questions about the fiscal year '24 financial assistance from the PDC to the county? So I know I mentioned at the beginning, it's a little bifurcated right now. There's the tax commission payments, then there's the PDC portion as well. I know it's been about 2 weeks or roughly or so since the county got that award letter. I just want to see if there are any questions that we need to address.
I reached out to you, and I think I have a plan for, because it doesn't take into account COLAs
Okay.
for our staff. I think what we're going to do is just take what the workload compliance is allowed, and then we'll pay that difference out of the formula grant.
Okay.
I think that's going to work. Dave and I are working on the budget right now, and then we'll know for sure.
Okay.
But thank you.
No problem. And then this one is, I guess, a couple months old, but every year we send an annual report to the county regarding indigent defense. I meet with Mr. Martinez and Mr. Dixon. Usually we go over that. I believe I sent that report out in April, but since I'm the one that drafts that report, if any of you had any questions regarding that report, I wanted to make myself available to answer those questions.
I don't have any. Dave?
No, we've already addressed that.
And then I guess just finally, and this drifts back a little bit to what we discussed at the beginning. As far as the schedule goes, I know we talked about the transition to the state public defender next year and what we do know at this point in time. Throughout the remainder of this year, the PDC will continue to operate essentially on the same calendar we have for the last few years. And so you should be receiving your defending attorney annual reports, the county copies, on November 1st. At the end of the year, there will be an indigent defense expenditure report. We're still gathering that data so that we can transfer that along to the state, and so the state public defender has that information. And then Jason and Dave, I'll be reaching out to you again next year just to do an annual review meeting as far as how fiscal year 23 went. And then after that, I really don't know what the state public defender hopefully will give us more guidance as they're hired as to what we'll be doing as far as the PDC. But we know those things are out there. We'll continue to provide training. The public defense colleges next year again as well. And so as long as the PDC's around, we'll continue to have those trainings for the public defenders through the state as well. But do any of you have any other questions for me that I can help with?
No, it's been good.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
It's good to see you, Jay.
Scott?
You too.
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Crowther, Event Director, Business Manager.
I'm Kia Shaw. I'm the branch manager for the Idaho Food Bank.
So for the last several years, we have hosted the Idaho Food Bank's annual Thanksgiving drive. It's held up in the upper parking lot by the race arena. We just opened it up, and this year it will be open because we're having the school is using part of the parking lot. But usually we'll open it up and let them collect food, or you're actually distribute food, huh?
Yeah.
So would you mind just explaining the event
Yeah.
for the board?
So like Scott said, about 7 years ago, we started doing this event up there. What this is all entails is Barry Ski and Sports and several other businesses in town through the entire month of November do a turkey drive called Cranksgiving. I'm sure you all are familiar with that. All of those turkeys stay right here in Bannock County, and then we work with other agencies and all of our partners in Bannock County to do a Thanksgiving distribution the Saturday before Thanksgiving. So families will come through and they'll get a dry box with the shelf-stable things that you would use for Thanksgiving. They'd get their turkey rolls, and then we also have produce usually that we give out as well with it. On average, we're serving anywhere between 950 and 1,100 families during this distribution in about a 4 or 5 hour period. It's encouraged to be for Bannock County residents. We do not police that, because if folks are really going to come in from outside of the county and they really need food assistance, I'm not going to turn them away. That's not my job. And so this location is actually really beneficial for us because we use the gravel lot to stage all the cars to keep them off the road and keep the traffic to a minimum, and then we use the asphalt part to do the actual distribution. And we've had a couple folks time it over the last several years. When they get in line about the middle of the distribution, it takes less than 45 minutes to get from that spot to get out, because we have such amazing volunteers who do this. So we're really grateful for the county for letting us use this space, and we're asking one more time if we can use it again this year.
How many people do you have go through there?
It's anywhere between 950 and 1,100 families through the entire time, and we takes about 125 volunteers for the entirety to do it.
Well, okay, and it doesn't cause you guys any heartburn, set up, take down?
No, usually all we do is open the parking lot. This year will be open,
Okay.
so it's not going to cause anything else.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
How many volunteers did you say?
About 125.
How many are there on the day of the distribution?
125.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we run 4 different distribution lines, and it takes about 20 volunteers per distribution line, and then some other things.
All right. Nope.
Okay, well, then I would make a motion that we go ahead and approve the request as presented, because this is a great community event. Appreciate the efforts. We have a motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yeah, there's.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Scott. Let's see, let's go to Doug. Abby, come on up.
Morning.
Good morning. Abby, you're not moving very fast. Are you still suffering from your tooth?
Yes, it hurts today.
Doug Cohn, Bannock County Probation.
Okay,
Evie, Director, Bannock County Probation.
okay. Floor is yours.
Oh, what we came to talk to you guys about today is we hired a new PO and we need an office for them to meet with people. And we had talked with Brain and they were over touring the office the other day, and they told us to put it on the agenda and bring it to you guys.
Okay,
Ernie and I were over there. He's got some space in the back that up front they're utilizing now for pretrial officer.
Well, so before, when we had moved into that building, we had our pretrial officers out in that big open space.
Yep.
We now have to, so we had recently an Idaho State Police audit for our NCIC use. Our 3 pretrial officers are the only officers in our department that can run those backgrounds. And to be in state compliance, they have to be in offices and they actually have to be locked, which we are now working with Ames, Ballard, and then we'll get with maintenance to get some locks on the door and some things going with that. But we can't have any of those terminals out in an open area. So my pretrial officers now have to have an office too. So we moved them all into the office, into an office, kind of shuffled some things around, and they're all there. But that now leaves us 1 office short for the new PO.
okay.
And so as Ernie and I were walking through and kind of navigating where we're going to put the conflict public defenders, we caught Doug, and there was some office space that's in front of them that would actually work, and he was good with it. But wanted to get on here so that you guys could talk about all these.
Okay, so the space all works out with everything we've got going over there for right now?
Yep.
Okay, and it fits your needs?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any questions?
No, I saw it too, so.
Okay, well then I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the office request.
Okay, we have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks for
you.
coming over. Emma and friends.
Good morning. Emma Iannacone, Public Information Officer.
Kyle Burmester, Bannock County Public Works Director.
Dylan Evans, landfill manager.
We are here to go over an outreach plan and a fact sheet about the McCammon landfill and transfer station and the options for the future of that. So I submitted this fact sheet to you guys last night, looking for your input, edits. CDM Smith put this together for us with the help of Kyle and Dylan. To kind of go through some of the numbers and the logistics of the different options for the future of the station. And we plan to present this to the public throughout the month of September, leading up to a public meeting that we have scheduled for September 21st. It's a Thursday evening from 6 to 7 at the Mountain View Elementary School in McCammon. They've agreed to host us in their gymnasium.
I'm sorry, what's the date again?
September 21st,
Okay.
a Thursday evening. And so we were just looking for your edits, your input. Do you guys want to expand on that a little bit since you have more background on the
We're just trying to keep it at a, 60,000 foot level of trying to keep it pretty easy to understand. We can be available to answer any more in-depth kind of questions, but just make it kind of an easy read for the public of what some of our options are.
We did ask CDM Smith to create a more in-depth report, correct?
So we don't really have we have what we bring before on budgetary numbers and stuff like that. We have different information on different stuff like a C&D landfill, transfer stations, remediation of water, what regulations we're under, any of that kind of stuff, but we don't have a specific report on this location.
So what would be the value of having CDM go down and do a little bit more of a detailed report than the information we currently have? Would there be any value in that?
All they're gonna have is what we're regulated by. They could do a little bit of what's actually on site, what the tonnage estimation is and stuff like that, but it's kind of just go based off of regulation of what.
Kind of depends on how much money you want to throw at it, I guess, kind of what you're getting. I don't know if it would be a huge value for your expense for it.
Okay. And you just have to refresh me on the cost to the public. Have we talked about that, or is that something you guys just kind of determine based on what your thoughts are, or I can't remember if we talked about this specifically, so just refresh my memory on that.
I think that was looking at being upside down in the expense. That was just kind of a rough ballpark of changing the numbers. If we decide to go one way or the other, one thing to bring it back to as close to zero as possible was increasing the cost down there.
Okay.
So that was a 5-year, average of what we've been putting into it with revenues from that facility is where we're getting, how we would have to double our costs down there or our fees to even break even.
So if I look at, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, so on option number 1, use it as a transfer station, those costs that you identified there would bring that $30,000 down closer to a zero number.
Yep.
Okay.
And some of the other options, they are estimates, without having a plan, a design plan and different things like that. That's just some of the numbers we've seen in the past of putting a liner in or, creating a compost facility and stuff. That's not, we don't have design work done on any of that, so that's a hard one to know with volatile prices right now. Things change every month, so.
What would be, and when I was reading through this last night, I don't recall talking about having that as a compost facility. Is that even a realistic possibility?
As a team, we kind of looked at and tried to see from our numbers what they're utilizing it for, or what could be something that is their biggest thing. And with the public outreach, maybe we'll find out a little bit more. But what kind of materials are they even bringing to there? Because we don't accept any business materials, so it's all household. And everyone has curbside. So,
Well, from the outcry we heard, it was all lawn stuff, and if we didn't accept lawn stuff, it's gonna end up on the side of the freeway,
so that's some of the stuff we're trying to figure out is you can't put green waste in as a C&D.
Right.
So, it's not an inert material, it's still gonna go through that breakdown process. So any lawn clippings or anything they bring to there has to go in a dumpster that gets hauled to Pocatello. So the way you could maybe save money if we made an area there that you could do like we're doing at Pocatello and compost some of this, that would help the county with some savings there.
And how would that help? Just because you wouldn't have to transfer as much to Pocatello?
Yeah.
Because the selling of the compost to Pocatello is starting to kind of do a good job there,
Yeah.
isn't it?
We're actually screening right now. Not something that we'll look at once we're through this process, maybe going through a change DUIs or whatever, just to bring that program as close to zero as well, so.
So even in Pocatello, the composting program is not necessarily a moneymaker.
Traditionally, but I think ever since COVID, people have been doing more yard work, more gardens, things like that, and we've been sold out since, I say early June, and we're actually screening currently right now. So it's become much more desired in the community.
When you say sold out, tell me what that means, because I was up there Saturday and there are like 10 lines of giant piles of compost.
Those are the ones that are going through the process of breaking down. So right now we had 3 completed lines that we're screening currently right now to be ready for sale.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have to go through that complete process, and then we have to have it tested so that it isn't hot, or else we could kill off everything that, so it has to go through the complete breakdown process. We test it, make sure there's no chemical, no anything with it before we start to sell it.
So that was my question. If we add that to McCammon, where it's not really even a moneymaker here in Pocatello, would that? Again, first time we had that discussion.
The problem with having it there is you have to have equipment there all the time to roll it, move it, stack it, which we don't have at the moment.
So given that, I would suggest we take that option off the table for this, because I don't see that getting us closer to that zero on the bottom line. That'd be my suggestion on that.
I will add that part of the reason we liked having the multiple options is to show the community what we've considered, and while removing the option, because it wouldn't be net zero, we could at least include that information in the cost to the public or in the impact. That way the public knows that we are considering it, or we have considered it.
Okay.
And it is an informational thing, because a lot of people don't, and that was new things to me, but how we're regulated is, it's kind of like, if it's trimmings for this composting kind of stuff, if it's trimmings, you can't put it in that landfill. So if it's branches, weeds, lawn, but all of us think, well, that's just grass, it's everywhere, but we're regulated that we can't put it in there. The only thing we can do is construction waste. And so here's the weird ruling, but if you bulldoze a whole tree down to build a building, it's construction waste and it can go into that landfill. But if you're trimming the branches on that same tree, it cannot. So,
Do we do anything with like tree branches as far as mulching yet?
no, we've did programs where we took all the wood waste for a while and kept it for a year, did different things, and by the time we rented the chipper and did that, it, with the manpower, the rental on the machine, all, and trying to separate it as it comes to us, it just didn't.
I was just thinking Boise's got a center that has different, it's a recycle center basically. And so they do like sawdust and those kinds of,
And even like Bonneville has an awesome program with it, but they get, it's weird, each location's different. The most wood products we get are stuff that we can't do that with because we get a lot of railroad ties because we're kind of in this railroad area. Treated wood, we can't do any, you can't sell it, can't do anything, it needs to be at the landfill. So all that you're really looking at is trees, tree limbs, and some bare wood. And so once we separated that out, we don't really get a lot of trees, and it's weird because you can go just to Idaho Falls and they've got a whole yard that's just solid trees that people are cutting and stuff. So it's just location based kind of on the wood, so.
The only other thought that I had was, what's the trend for use of the landfill? Like the last 5 years, do we go from 2,000 users per year to 1,800 to 1,500, or has it been flat?
I think it's kind of stayed pretty consistent.
Yeah, I think, remember looking back on it now, I think like 5 years ago, you were kind of at that like 2,000, I think, well, I want to say it's 4,000 at the, like 5 years ago. And then it kind of trended down. And I think that some of the programs we run, like free days and stuff, I think people did big cleanups. We went through the COVID time where a lot of people cleaned up, and now it pretty steady, about like 30 customers a day in the summer, and then in the winter, quite a few less, so.
That would be the only thing I maybe would add to this, was just a trend. You know, here's the amount of use it gets. John, do you have anything?
Well, I like the idea of adding a trend, and I'd go back at least 5 years to get that. I think that would be helpful. This $30,000 a year cost, you say you're losing about $30,000 a year on the McCammon landfill and transfer station. How did you come, what does that period cover? Was that, you said that was an average or what?
So we on one of our earlier meetings, we bring that in to the commission and stuff, and it had what our expense is and what our revenues are for the last 5 years. And so each year, yeah, we're around 26, 28, 30. 1 year it was like 40,000 that we were in the red. And because if you have to fix anything there or something like that, so that was the average of 5 years, is around 30.
That's up through 2022 or what?
But yes, I think so.
Okay. And how many days a week was the landfill operating over that 5-year period?
2 in the summer and 1 in the winter.
And how much is it operating now?
Just recently, we are at just 1 day.
And what's that going to do with your annual cost, losing about how much per year being at 1 day?
It could change that. I don't have that information yet. We've only did it for like 2 months.
Okay. You could probably prorate that though and figure it out. Give me an estimate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know what that number is currently. And then how much are we losing on the Fort Hall landfill per year?
Losing? Nothing.
We lose nothing on that.
No, we put into reserves each year.
no, not each year. It depends
Well-
on the capital requests for the year. Our office has basically what money rolls over into reserves or gets used each year. That information should come from our office if you want
Okay.
something like that. But I
So-
can provide you that.
So is that correct then? The Fort Hall landfill doesn't lose any money, but this one loses 30,000?
Well, it's all of the expenses are combined and all the
Mhm.
revenue is combined. The only thing that's broken out separate is the gas system. But as far as, I think when Aubrey put the numbers together, because their staff did it, not our office, And I think she just took the person that was working out there
Yeah.
and
So-
took the wage time, the number of hours, and then she can track the revenue for gate sales for McCammon. And so she took what money came in versus what expenses were out, I'm assuming. And I can work with her and confirm those numbers, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea since we're gonna publish numbers. It'd be good to have our office validate that.
Yeah, with our asset management, we can see our hours of time, labor, fuel, expenses, everything. We pull that out for different things we're doing, whether it's emptying a dumpster for the sheriff department. We have that you can pull out anything and have what that cost per year was.
So depending on the year, if we've got a lot of remediation and cell work to do, like on cell 4, we might use reserves more than we build reserves. But it's all dependent upon the work that's being done up there that year.
So it sounds like I need to get with you to really get a better understanding of these costs.
Yeah, and I've got all of our financials. All you have to do is look at one page in our financials for the back so many years, and it'll tell us if we're building reserves or using reserves. But we would need to look in more detail at why we're using reserves if we're using it. But most likely it'll be because we're doing big projects like cell expansions or
So-
remediation.
So we're hoping to set our rates, and that's one of the ways we're looking at rates, is we've got to set our rates to pay for our expense at the time, but then also be trying to set aside some money for like the next $6 million expansion, so that we can keep up with that.
Okay.
From a technical, is this supposed to be a one-pager?
Yes, and I was a little bit concerned about that, with it being two sides, and so much information to put into one. I think if we're printing it, we could try and fit it onto the legal paper, right? But for online PDF wise, I think it would have to stay on the two.
Well, online, I'm not too worried about scrolling a little bit. That's not that big a deal. And the reason I ask that is I'm just trying to see from a visual standpoint where you'd put some of this historical data, you know, the trend chart. And I would like to have some of the historical financial on there, just revenue, expense, bottom line, so you can kind of see that trend over the years, whether it goes up or down. I don't care, but I think that's worth noting that, you know, one year we lost 20,000, next year it was only 10, but the third year it was 40, you know. And then you can answer that just at the meeting with the projects or whatever.
Is there any reason, or anybody have any comments on if it was 2 pages? I guess. I mean, if we
I mean,
did.
it kind of already is 2 pages.
Yeah, if
Once
we
you
did.
once you hit that back page, might as well fill it with an infographic of what Jeff's
Yeah.
talking
Yeah,
about.
if we could
But
put
that's what I'm
some of them
saying.
graphs on there.
If we look at maybe a legal
Oh,
size
yeah.
versus 2 pieces of paper, but yeah, once we're already going, let's put some of that other information on there.
Yeah, so we want the trend graph of the usage, and then you also want a trend graph of the cost.
Yeah, I'm just, again, I go back with John, let's go back 5 years so we can say in 2020 our revenue was X, expenses Y.
Will you make sure that Aubrey works with me on that, please?
Okay.
And one more thing I would add, it would be, if there's a year where there's some significant cost that's not normal, like you bought some piece of equipment or did something like that, that should be asterisked, and people should know this is why this is 40,000 and not the average 20,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
Outlier years.
And it's usually for capital for that facility, like is in a road maintenance or something to that effect. It's not something that is, like a piece of equipment, I would say, is utilized over the whole solid waste division, whether it's Fort Hall or whatever. This is stuff that's actually like a building thing there on site, so it's still kind of part of that McCammon operation.
Some of these other numbers on here, you say 75K to close the C&D landfill, 300K to construct a new compost facility, et cetera. How confident are you of those numbers?
Just from what I'm looking at, so say compost, your expense is your asphalt, to have the asphalt facility. I know how much per square foot we're looking at. That's where I'm getting them numbers. Closure cost, we know what we have to do on our closure plan by the equipment. So that's based off of equipment usage, employees, so that's figure, materials, labor.
But you're pretty
equipment.
confident of these numbers?
No.
Okay.
I mean, without getting square footage
Right.
and all that, no, right? We haven't did that much work involved with it, no.
Yeah.
Maybe put estimate.
Yeah, I was thinking adding
Or
estimated cost to the
anticipate.
public.
Do you have an idea what the plus or minus might be? Like, it'd be, this is the number plus or minus 10%, or it's 20%. Do you have any idea what that might be?
No.
Okay.
On the, going down that path on option number 3, construct a new line facility, I would strike that last part, which would not be financially feasible. Just
For added employees or the?
No, the $8 million to construct a new landfill, which would not be financially feasible. Just strike that last line. Just, it's 8 million to minimum
Okay.
to construct a new facility.
Yeah, and so say like on that 8 million, we've had just one project at the landfill and had a $2 or $3 million gap in our bids. So even on an estimated cost, then you go to bid and you have that big of a gap. That's where I'm like, I can't say like 10% to, or it could be a lot. It's hard to.
Maybe you change that one, just say estimated up to $10 million to construct a new landfill. Just
Sounds good.
leave it at something like that.
Yeah, it's hard to know. Sometimes we hit it great and we save some, and then sometimes we really pay.
Probably depends on how busy the vendors are too, right?
Yeah.
It'd be
Supply and
cheaper.
demand.
So,
You have anything else, John?
No.
Jason, any thoughts?
No.
Would you like us,
points.
after making these edits, would you like us to return with an updated version for a Tuesday or Thursday meeting for your final approval?
I would.
Yeah.
And then just quickly, I'll go over the idea for the public meeting. We were imagining having Kyle or Dylan will both give a quick presentation on the numbers and kind of go over the fact sheet, and have CDM Smith representative there as well to kind of go over the environmental impacts, give background as to our remediation up at the Fort Hall landfill and what we would potentially have to do at the McCammon landfill, and then open it up for questions from the public. Commissioners would also be there both as attendees to hear the information and answer questions from the public as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm good with that.
Is it an agendized meeting?
It would need to be agendized. So we'll need Nancy there as well to take minutes, but it would not be a public hearing. There would be no vote at the end of it. It would be just informational purposes, both for the decision makers and the people being impacted.
Is this the only meeting we have scheduled currently?
This is the only one currently, yeah. I believe the plan was to have the decision made before the end of the fiscal year. Is that correct? I might be misunderstanding that.
Yeah, we were just trying to, we can do whatever and add more time and whatever you guys would
Timeline's
prefer
not
to do.
strict.
We were just trying to at least get something out there before our next fiscal year.
Do you think that gym would be big enough?
I think so. I think that's pretty good size. I've been to a few different ones there, and they've got pretty good size there.
What time is the meeting?
6 to 8 p.m.
6 to 8. And what was the location again?
It's at the Mountain View Elementary School in McCammon. And I'll also have them add the address of that location to the back where it has the information about the public meeting.
Okay.
We wanted to keep it in the community, that way they don't have to drive up to Pocatello for that. And we also wanted it in the evening so people can attend if they have regular work hours.
Yeah.
We could even set it up for on size wise, that if we set a certain way, we could use the whole stage as seating too if we needed to.
Yeah. Okay. We have a plan. So you'll come back with some revisions and we'll go from there.
Yes.
You guys are comfortable with the direction of this? Okay, that'll work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shanda. Did you get your computer up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shanda Crystal, Chief Procurement Officer. I have an update for the board today. I'd like to start with the first one for the road and bridge salt. We had been discussing and looking if there were piggyback options or anything like that that might be useful to Bannock County. As discussions with Road and Bridge Department yesterday, we felt we were more successful in bidding out this product like we did last year, so we're moving forward in that direction. It will be posted on the 26th and the 2nd, and we'll move forward and get that bid going just as quickly as we can. On the second one for road and bridge fuel, I do have a correction to make. Last week, Commissioner Crowder asked about an estimate of usage. I was drastically off. I had only reported to you about what the rebill might be for the county. In talking with Kyle, he tells me it's $900,000 that the county spends in fuel. That includes both the landfill, road and bridge, and then the rebill to the other departments. So I wanted to correct that information that I had reported. In regards to that discussion, we had reviewed again with his department of how we are currently running those bids, pros and cons of that, and then if we switch to maybe an annual process, and we do want to look down that annual process. That's how the state does it. We're looking for doing a little more research on some other entities that do it like that before we head that direction. And we do want to do it in a slower time for road and bridge, so it's not causing problems as they switch over from one to the next. We feel there might be added advantages to having a single supplier other than multiple suppliers. We've been having a little struggle over the last little bit, and we don't quite know where the problem's coming from because we have multiple suppliers of whoever wins the bid that time. So we think we might have benefits to have a single supplier for a year. So we're at least heading down that path, doing additional research, but that is where we're headed for now.
Single supplier
For the county's fuel. But this won't be, we'll do research over the next couple months. I haven't scheduled it out, but they reported this morning to me that April is about their lowest fuel time. So we want to back that bid up and have it awarded prior to April of next year is where we'd be headed. So, but we're still doing research before that gets, released and finalized, but that's the path that we want to travel down for now.
One supplier annually, is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next bit I would like to review is the request for information for courthouse security upgrades. That is for items such as panic buttons and door access. There's a few things that they're looking at, but they're also asking the industry to then update our security and our facilities director on what is potentially out there. Talking about different things that we can add or do differently, a different process. So we're hoping to get some great information there. That RFI has been posted. The site visit was pushed back another week. We wanted to skip over Labor Day weekend. So that site visit has been rescheduled for the 6th of September, just to giving, again, vendors longer to arrange travel and make sure that they can come if they would like to participate. The next one is for the detention center rock landscaping. That bid is due today, here in 7 minutes, is when vendors have till they can submit a bid for that, and then the board will open them here at 11 o'clock and we'll get that project going. On the janitorial contract for the facilities, I have listed here again that I should have a recommendation for the board today. I put it on my dashboard and then failed to put it on my agenda request. So it was not listed and noticed appropriately, so I have corrected that. It'll be on the board's agenda for Tuesday. So that was my mistake, but the evaluation crew has completed theirs and they do have a recommendation for the board to award that contract. And that is all I have for the board today, unless there's other questions that I can answer.
Nope, so we'll be back at 11 for that opening?
For the bid opening, correct.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to take a quick liberty to add the discussion for the Convergence building real quick. That'll be a quick discussion, I think, and then we'll do Christie in the executive session. So, just for the record, a few of us went and looked at the Convergence building earlier this week to consider it as a potential admin building for the county. It's currently up for sale. It is going to auction at the middle of September. And so we had Dan Kendall go look at it. He thought the building was in great shape. He couldn't see anything on his walkthrough that really jumped out at him that said this is an issue be aware of. And so the discussion today is just kind of, do we want to seriously consider that as a potential? In which case we'd have to start looking at getting some stuff ready for the September auction, or what we want to do. So just want to open up the floor for thoughts or comments. Get anybody's ideas. John, do you have any thoughts? You want to start us off?
Well, I'd like to hear from Jason first, if that's all right.
Sure. So I'm not averse to the idea of an admin building necessarily, but I would like to know, like, what would go over there. Because of the location of that building, which I don't like, it makes me wonder what, I think some offices could fit over there, but I don't know who it would be that would make a nice workflow. I think, yeah, the building is probably new enough and nice enough that it's probably a good building. I just don't know that, that we need an admin building unless we can absolutely steal it off the market. And who would necessarily be there that would be a good fit. I don't think we need to buy a building just to buy a building. I think there are some other options. The other thing is, as time goes on and we're implementing new software, I don't see us increasing bodies very quickly. And so do we need a building that big? 'Cause I feel like right now we fit pretty well overall, is my opinion. Would it be nice to have some bigger spaces here and there? Yeah. But the spaces that we need aren't necessarily things that we can move. Like, for example, the clerks that are over there in juvenile, they sit 3 people in an area half the size of where we're sitting right now. But we have a plan to change that up here. So I just don't know who would go there, what departments would go there, and if it would be a good flow for the public to be served. You know what I mean? So,
On that, something we need to keep in mind is when you move departments, the flow of money. That increases. The commission voiced concern not too long ago about transporting monies. That could potentially open that up depending on who's moved. Right now, the treasurer's office has a vault that they need because of sometimes the money that they hold. So just if that could be kept in mind also. Say you decide to move motor vehicles, they bring money over to the courthouse every day, so that would be a transport discussion that
we'd have to work
we
through.
would need to logistically work out. So if that could be kept in mind also.
Yeah. So I'd like to know the thought behind it a little bit. I was gone last week. I know you reached out to me, which I appreciated, but I was gone last week. So I'd just like to know the thought behind it a little bit, and where the great need is. I don't want to buy a building just to buy a building, just because it's available. There's one thing I've learned in 20 years of real estate, there's always another opportunity down the road. So if we don't get this one, there'll be another one. There always is. There's always another house. There's always another building and another opportunity. So,
Well, from my perspective, there's no sense of urgency other than when we found out it was coming on the market as an auction. That was like, okay, maybe there's an opportunity. And I looked at it primarily because we looked at the building on South Fifth as a potential option. So the same things that we talked about with moving down to South Fifth, I think would apply over here, but I'm like you, I don't love the location, but it does have that extra parking lot, so we could have as much parking as we need, things like that. So I have no real dog in the fight per se.
right,
It's
just an idea.
just an idea, and so that's where I was at.
Yeah, I like what both you guys have said, and I don't think I have anything to add.
I think our most immediate need is parking. Not where somebody's going to sit to do their job, but where they're going to park their car when they're here. Because as we all know, we use the church's parking lot every day. There's, 50 to 100 cars over there, so.
Yeah. Well, I'll reach out to some of the other elected officials and get their thoughts, and maybe we can have another discussion here in another week or so. But we just want to have this discussion on the record to let everybody know that we're talking about it, we're considering it, and
I can't remember if you had mentioned, is there an opening bid, or is it just?
they do have a reserve,
Yeah.
but they didn't disclose what that was, obviously, but
Okay.
it's 40,000 square feet, full basement, full main floor, and partial upstairs.
And who's conducting the auction? Do you know?
I did not ask that question. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
We'd have to reach out and find out.
And I'm assuming we'll use ARPA funds? Is that the
Yeah.
thought?
Yeah.
Okay, we probably should have a meeting on how we anticipate allocating those ARPA funds so that we don't overcommit, or also so people know what projects are going to be approved for next year, both so Daniel knows what work he can do, but also so that we know where we're at in the scheme of things.
Christy and I had talked about, over the last few days, getting on the agenda to talk about the budget, because we had talked about potential projects to just kind of start to clearly define for Dan's benefit, so he ought to be here at the meeting. So we could get on the agenda to talk about some of those projects that you and I had talked about, and then we could throw this in there
Why don't we
to,
do that next Thursday? Would that work?
Would that
Next
work?
Thursday?
Yeah,
you,
we can
Christie?
do that,
Okay.
and then invite all of the elected officials.
Yeah.
So that they can voice what, if there's any extra monies, then they can voice what their needs are, and then we could see what may or may not need to be addressed, and that might help make a decision on if the if the building is an option.
Right.
I think so.
Um,
Everyone knows.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like,
I said that. No, you're good.
But then we can see what the needs are, and then that might help you make a better decision if you know what Anita needs or what Tony needs, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, let's do that, then let's plan to talk about it again next week, but we've had it on the record now, so that'll work.
And at that meeting, would you be at a point where we'd update on the forensic lab, or?
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to Christy Clauser.
This should probably be an executive session,
Okay.
if we go into that under personnel.
Yep. John, I'll have you.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into executive session under Idaho Code 74206, 1A and B.
We have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Since
Don't we
they,
have to independently?
Yeah, Chantel.
So, Commissioner Crowder?
Yes.
Yes.
Beat it.
No, yeah, you can stay.
Thanks. Thanks, boss.
We talked about this, yeah.
so with commission permission, we'll start with Dave's, and then Dave can leave, and we can continue.